Okay. All right. So the communication survey, I don't know if you had a chance to read it. Lynn did a good job of summarizing it, given that there were 300 participants. I suppose my takeaway was that I didn't see anything really jump off the page that was glaring error or needed improvement on. Hi, Shara. But there were definitely some suggestions. So why don't we could either discuss it, or I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, we can hold on it and wait till December, and then you could maybe mull it over and digest it a little bit more. I don't know how much time everybody's had to look at it. Any thoughts? I feel like I'm muted. Can you hear me?
I've only kind of scanned through kind of the results, but I'll admit I was surprised about, and we've kind of talked about this before, making sure we're inclusive of all, right, like ages in our communication platforms and how we communicate, right? As someone who doesn't do a lot of like paper, right? Like truthfully, I don't read a lot of the newspapers. Again, clearly the data shows there's a strong reliance on the Hometown Herald and a lot of paper communication. So I think it's good to know, right? Because I wouldn't have necessarily thought that right out of the gate, but the data shows that that's still definitely preferred method. And then I guess just on the app discussion, clearly a 50-50 split and whether that's worthwhile. So not a lot of guidance yet on that piece, which was makes our job a little bit harder.
I noticed that, there was the notation that some of the folks that responded to the survey wanted to know what the $7,000 is for. I think that maybe a breakdown or more detail. Which I think that we all expected that as well. So I think there could be that segment of the population in the neighborhood that might not be the type of person that would use it necessarily, but that understand the value. So.
All right. Anyone else?
313 people responded. What was the response rate? Do you know? I can't remember how many were sent out.
Well, we mailed it to every home. So there's 2,600 homes, 2,400 homes. Is that right, Claire?
I found the response rate kind of disappointing. I was hoping to see more than 300 people. And I see almost 43% were 65 or older. So I guess it's maybe no surprise they preferred paper communications. I would sort of expect that maybe from that demographic. The one thing that I took note of and thought was one of the things I took note of that I thought was pretty interesting. Someone suggested having a full-time director of communications for the city. Maybe since there wasn't a clear push for an app, maybe that's where the money might be better spent, to freelance that out or find a way to utilize those funds in that way. Because I know you do so much for city communications. It seems like your time would be better spent doing city manager stuff than communication stuff. Just a thought.
I'm going to kind of echo some of Jeff's sentiments in the sense that, based on the demographic of those that responded, obviously we're going to have a bias in the survey. So I think to write off the cost of the app right away reflects that bias. So I'm not sure how we, as a committee representative of the community, self-correct, considering that there's a skew to our survey result. And I don't know if folks have a suggestion. I still tend to think that maybe what Jeff is saying is correct in the sense that there's, you know, different ways to spend budget. I think some of the responses considered, you know, millage type increases, which is not what we're asking of the residents. We're trying to take use of already allotted city dollars. So I think there may be a misconception on that field where we're not asking for additional monies. We're spending monies that are, you know, allotted to city services. So while I agree with like the overall representation of the survey, I think we also have to consider the bias based on those that responded and reflect, you know, how an app may be used and take out the consideration of, you know, will this cost me extra money? Because it's really money that's already in city coffers, is my understanding. And if I'm wrong, please stop me. But I don't think we should pause the conversation on the app solely based on, as Jeff said, you know, a very low response rate that doesn't necessarily reflect the full demographic of the community.
I do have a question around the cost of the app. Is there a contract that we would have to enter into that would require us to continue with it for X number of years? Or could we potentially run it as a pilot and see what kind of use it gets?
Yeah, you could run it as a pilot.
Under what term, Amy?
Pardon me?
Under what kind of term?
They were a 1-year term.
So it's a $7,000 commitment, I guess, either way is what Aaron and I are trying to gather.
Yes,
Okay.
It's 7,000 annually, right?
yes.
Right, but what Aaron's suggesting is that perhaps there's a trial period so that we can, you know, determine like what the investment would be for a trial basis. Aaron, if I'm misconstruing your question, please interrupt me. But if there's a way to say, you know, we can try this for 3 months, if there's increased usage, then, you know, maybe there's a major justification for that $7,000. It's certainly harder when you have to just take the full bite of the year. Have we approached, and I'm not sure who we're communicating with, sorry, I'm gonna put my lawyer hat on. Have we approached any of the tech companies or the app companies that we're considering using and asked for a shorter term basis, since this isn't necessarily writing code or, you know, even if it's just for like a limited amount of services on a trial basis, such that we're not like getting the full gamut from them. There has to be, in my humble opinion, a way to maybe take use of the app. And I think this is what Aaron was insinuating. I'm sorry, Aaron, I'm reading between the lines. If there was a way to, you know, pick 3 city services for perhaps, you know, a couple of month basis, such that it wouldn't be like the full bite, but we can find out if our residents use that.
Or even if we were to run it for a year at, you know, the 7,000 X dollars, that may be enough time to determine whether or not it's something we want to continue with. There's nothing that's, you know, requiring us, I assume, to continue past a year. However, my other thought, the other side of that is once you roll it out, you know, how do you manage the public relations around it going away if we decide that it's not worth it? So that's also something to think about in terms of it not being a great look to offer it and then snatch it right back.
Well, that's where I'm kind of thinking that maybe from like a PR perspective, if there was a way to take like even a 6-month bite, you know, we roll it out as a trial, such
Right,
that
call
the
it
folks
pilot.
that, such that the folks that like have responded, they don't think they would use it, have the opportunity to try it because we know that they're involved and invested. And the folks that may not have responded to the survey, but certainly are technological users, which we kind of already know based on like some of our other social media platforms. I think it solves the PR question, and it also, you know, preserves that this might be a really useful tool for the community.
Yep, I agree. And it could also be piloted even with a subset potentially of the residents,
Yes.
right? If there's concern about sort of about PR, but just, you know, having a group that becomes the pilot group that also is, you know, receiving push notifications, essentially requests for feedback, like not constantly, but frequently, as something to consider. especially if we were to go for a shorter time period. And I guess for me, my question is, I see that there are some written responses about transparency and concerns about transparency and sort of robustness of communication of like news and sort of just in time news and information from the city. And here, it's all in the sort of qualitative comments that people have shared here. And I wonder if an app could solve for that. But just noting that that seems to be a bit of a theme in what's here, like that there's an over reliance on Nextdoor and people are questioning how much information, misinformation may be there, as well as some Facebook groups.
So, Shara, how would the app counteract the people relying on Nextdoor for information?
I think it's the just-in-time nature, right? I don't use Nextdoor, but when I did, I recall that people would post like, I saw someone suspicious on such and so address. Did anybody else see that person? Or it's things of that sort in particular, which are kind of just in time. I guess it's like, is it 311, 711? I forget what it's different in different cities, the number, like the information kind of hotline that a lot of municipalities use. But things of that sort, as well as like the one about water bills. I do remember this from a few years ago. When people see spikes in their water bills, there's been various threads around why that is. Are the city's meters wrong? How do you audit that? Does it get audited? Like I can just think about that sort of thing. But if there's, places to, I don't know, push out communication proactively about how that happens or like whatever the case may be. I think it's the ability to quickly get information in people's hands as it's like happening now or near real time.
I think to Shira's point, personally, I have some concerns about the app and the cost from the standpoint of, could any of that functionality just be put onto our website and just ensure that the website's mobilely responsive, right? Instead of having to do a whole marketing push by getting people to download and opt into an app, right? People are inherently going to go to the website when they have an issue or want to do something in the city. Do we just put time and effort at really kind of making the website a mobile friendly place and a place where a lot of that functionality lives? I think the only counter to that point is what Shara mentioned, this just in time. The people may not like push notifications, but I think there are certain instances in which push notifications from an app, from a city app, would be really helpful. I can think, I live on Talbot, right? And there's been construction going on Talbot, and one day they shut the water off. I hadn't seen that they put the notice in the door, so like we didn't. But if there was a way to get a digital notification about that, that would have been really helpful, right? And that's what an app could do that you're never going to get from the website. So. So I think if it's not an app, the other thing I know was in the comments a couple times, not in overabundance, but it's sort of a texting system, an opt-in texting system, I think would be interesting. But the one big caution I have for the app is just, would those resources be better put to putting them on the website, not on an app?
Can I make a devil's advocate point? Obviously, we know that like our time and resources of the city and the city's time are, limited, but sorry to push back on this, but who's to say we couldn't do both? Because I agree. I think like the website needs to be better. I think we've like all started this committee with that kind of, in mind, and knowing that there needs to be a more accessible website. But like, I guess I don't see why one precludes the other. If I'm missing something from a cost standpoint, like, I agree the website should be a priority, and I don't know if that's something maybe the committee could weigh in on. I think the website does need to be a priority. Let me be more direct. But I guess I don't see how one necessarily precludes the other if what we're trying to fulfill is real-time notification, push notification, quick accessibility. I'm going to also make the website more of a place where you can seek information and access city services more easily.
I have a question about the app. Who would be managing it and posting things there? Amy, would that be you?
Yeah, unless we may move to bring on a part-time employee to handle this, because it's,
To handle all communications needs,
mhm.
like the one person suggested hiring a communications.
Marketing director.
Yeah. I see your point about why can't we do both, the website and the app, but if that adds another layer on top of Amy's already filled plate, then maybe it's counterproductive in a time management outlook.
Do these services ever get bundled? So I'm just thinking about this in terms of efficiency. Like, we're a small city. I mean, I am from a different part of the country, and a city like 10,000 people or less would never be a city where I grew up. It would be like, what do they even call it? I forget the name of it, but it's like a little part of a city, but it's not the city. So it's just the organizer that and I understand why this region is as it is, but we are very, very small. And I guess I'm wondering, do we ever share, like Sakra, is there a communications or are there other shared services that we could pursue with other small cities in the area, particularly if like what we need is like sort of technical communications rather than like content expertise and like knowing Huntington Woods, right? We need social media updated. We need push notifications. We need, like a general blurb about this. Is that like is there a such thing as sort of Sakra is the best analogy I can think of. Is there like a Sakra shared services for communications or other city services in small cities in this region?
I see each city has their own communication employee. I know Ferndale does, Oak Park does, Berkeley does, and they're all full-time positions. I'm not sure that we could share responsibilities. I was hoping if there was somebody out there that was doing part-time work, that we could partner with them and provide some additional work. But right now, the cities that I'm aware that have communications on staff, it's a full-time position. I did want to talk about the app because when I hear the focus on the app is that the value is in the push notifications. And we have a push notification service called Nixle that the public safety department uses for public safety type incidents, lost dogs or, noticed, breaking into cars and things like that, or what we've been using it now for water main breaks and when we're going to shut the water off. So we can work on beefing up the promoting Nixle so that we can start using that for push notification and just focus on the app part of it was supposed to make doing business with the city easier. So if the focus is that it is going to be primarily used as push notification, then that's going to be redundant. We have a platform that does that. Not marketed very well, apparently. Not that many people know about it. I don't know if any of you have signed up for it. But that is something that we do offer.
I hadn't actually realized that. Yeah. That's you sign up, but you opt into those notifications?
Yes.
Is there a restriction on the content of what that's used? Does it has to be public safety or like kind of infrastructure focused?
No, it is run by the public safety department. So we were trying to keep it safety related. So it'd be public works announcements, public safety, public works announcements. We didn't use it we haven't up until now used it for things like, pool passes on sale today, that type of thing. But there isn't any reason why we couldn't. So you think even if with an app, people would still have to download it? There's still some action that a resident would have to take, either downloading an app or signing up for Nixle alerts.
Just from my perspective, I've lived here 10 years. This is the first I've learned about it. Wasn't in the, new resident information. I've never seen it. I apologize if I've missed it in the Herald. But there would need to be a campaign to, make sure that people knew and understood and how to and what type of information. And I doubt I'm the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I have to
hope I'm
echo
not.
Claire's point from the chat, which is if you're not able to cipher content, then people tend to kind of glaze over those notifications. So, we've addressed that there's a really broad demographic to our community, which is what we love about our community. And I'm sorry, I'm like the broken record for the app. So if I'm the only one pushing the app right now, people feel free to shut me down. But in all seriousness, somebody stop me. But I do think from a community aspect, the point and purpose of an app, and this kind of echoes Shira's point, which is we're not that big. So there has to be groups and pockets of folks that are looking for particular forms of communication, such as I have 2 small kids. The kind of communications that I'm focused on are, of course, safety related. I think we could all agree with that. But I also want, information on when I can sign up for summer camp and when I can buy my pool pass and where I can pay my water bill without having to schlep my kids in the car and walk into the city hall and have to pay my 5% because, of course, as a mom of 2, I've missed the due date. So I guess the problems that I'm hearing that we're trying to confront, I do feel that we might be able to address them in one fell swoop, because regardless, and I'm going to echo Eileen's perspective, which is I've been living here half a decade. I don't have this. I didn't even know this was a thing. I get it from my son's school. I agree with Claire. I glaze over half of the ones that I get from Hillel, but it's definitely okay, I got to sign up for whatever. Sometimes it does have its use. But I guess if the point is we're going to have to provide a quote unquote campaign to get city involvement, the folks that are going to be using the computer as a form of involvement, we're going to have to recruit those folks regardless. And if we can, focus on, there's clear demographics in our community that need X, Y, Z. If the first round or first couple rounds of the app are focusing on the folks that are going to use the app and, figure out demographic A is going to be looking for what are the top 3 content, forms that demographic A is going to use? What's the top 3 forms that demographic B and C? Because I'm kind of dividing the community amongst 3 groups, those with young children, those with, more grown, out of the house kids that are just wanting to be involved in the community. And then we have a very, very active senior citizen community within the community. So really in my head, and I'm sorry if I'm oversimplifying it, there's 3 groups that are going to really try to derive key communications from the website, our email blasts, the Herald, and the app. And even if the app was able to address one point from each of those groups in a successful manner, I think we've succeeded. And so perhaps before we even have, the debate about whether or not we're going to choose the app, we have to figure out what are the key components for each of those demographics. And I think that's what we've started to do with the survey. What would be successful as a community? What defines our success? And so would that be, making sure there's email blasts for school-age children, for let's prioritize and define what would be considered a quote unquote success, such that we start having actionable items that we can start taking steps for in terms of transparency, which is what we know the community wants as a priority, number 1. Number 2, balancing, city resources and you, Amy, without, burying you under. But I guess there are a number of different ways that we can do this. And we've all spent a lot of time and energy in this community trying to, address the community's concerns, which is, I think, what the benefit of this group is. We're really trying to respond to what the community wants and needs. But in order to do that, I guess I'm a little lost in like, what are we going to define as success and what is the plan to approach that? And I think until we've, ultimately defined those, we're kind of just spinning our wheels.
I think the app now is more, we're creating something and looking for an audience for it instead of giving the people that are using this stuff a simpler way of what we already have. I like the idea of looking for a more mobile friendly version of our website. I use a lot of programs at work here that we have a desktop version and then a mobile version, so we can do stuff on the road as well. And instead of an app, it's something we have to download. It's something we can just log into and access. And it's the same content, but it's just a lot friendlier for on a tablet or a cell phone to use. I'd be up for something like that. Focusing on fixing what we already have instead of trying to insert a new piece into the puzzle. It's that we might not even have enough of an audience to make it viable.
And I'm still in favor of piloting an app. That would be, if we were voting, going around, that would be my vote.
I would absolutely support an app. I remember talking about it at the first meeting. For me, a working mom, I think everything from signing up to Lauren's earlier point, paying a bill, taking out a book. I don't know if there would be any kind of transition between library, et cetera, but simplicity and ease. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in the car and gone down a road and it's closed, nothing had gone off on my, no beeping, no ding, to tell me to get my child to the pool, and all these different things. And I just think to myself on a daily basis, all the different things that I could use it for, and I'm one person. But in talking with different people in the community and in, the elementary school, I think there's definitely a need. I would love to see us try it. I really would. I would definitely support it.
Amy, would it be possible, and then I'll throw out to the group whether it would be worthwhile. So I think there's a lot of support and a lot of good points for piloting an app. And I think even if, you communicate that out to, was brought up, right? If we end up not wanting to remove it a year later, right? How do you communicate that? I think, right, we could easily communicate this as like, we're going to pilot an app for a year, test usage, see if it makes sense for Huntington Woods. It's a long way of asking. I know we talked about a couple different vendors. Once we think we might have the vendor, or if we want to invite both, is it worthwhile, or is it possible to have them maybe present here and walk us through kind of functionality, right? Maybe some other cities that are similar size or scope that are using it and it's being successful. I think it might be good for the group to get kind of the committee to get a firsthand maybe look at that, and it would either completely solidify for us that yes, like what, it's worth $7,000. Let's pilot it for a year, or maybe a red flag comes up.
Yeah, we've done a demo with our staff so that we understand how it works. So, and they're more than very happy to talk to the committee. That would be easy to do.
There's been a staff demo, but has there been any testing with actual users on the citizen end?
In Huntington Woods?
Mm-hmm.
With an app?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's sort of what we're looking for here, which, if we're playing the role of the end user who would be submitting things through this app or finding information through this app versus the city staff who would be posting things through this app or through this app. I just want to make sure that user population has had an opportunity to at least check it out. So yeah, I'm a long way of saying I agree with Will. I think it would be good for us wearing our hats as residents to look at it, given that the staff has already looked at it from the staff perspective, I assume.
It may also be, this is maybe jumping too forward, but if we would decide to move forward with it too, I think another good use of this committee is as a beta group as as the app is being developed. Now, from what I know from these vendors, a lot of it's pretty templatized and it's kind of
Yeah, it's
white
all plug
labeled
and
for
play.
cities,
Mm.
right? But it might be worth whether it's even 2 weeks, a week or 2 weeks, where we're just a beta group to start and test functionality.
Amy, and piggybacking, and Aaron, I agree with that 1000%. I think if we could become beta users and get, a trial before even rolling it out. So Amy, I think it'd be worth a negotiation. And I think these folks are really good at trying to sell their products. And I think it is very templatized. So it would be a very easy thing from a financial perspective for them to provide even complimentary. So it might be worth an ask and say, we're voting on this. Is that something you could provide? They don't have to, specialize content even necessarily, but just so we've had the opportunity to decide, is this a worthwhile platform? Because I do think we all agree that there's utility in it. It's just whether or not, functionally, it's going to give us what we're looking for and what the community is looking for, just to justify the cost and the use. But I agree. I think a beta would be, and if we could even serve as the beta for, free, that would be nice. And I think that's pretty easy for them to do.
And I would just add, if they're going to do a presentation, I like where this is going, that we asked for some use cases, like walk us through users, like who's a user who might, first time app user, like a person who does not typically use an app, a person who is very tech savvy and wants to go all the way in and link to their credit card, functionality and pay their water bill online. And, et cetera, et cetera. But, they would think of the use cases, or we could offer a few kind of user profiles, if you will, that are reflective of our population, just for presentation purposes.
And I can't remember if this has been asked before, but have you, Amy, talked with any of your counterparts in the surrounding communities to ask them for statistics on how their apps are being used?
No, I mean, I've downloaded a bunch of apps on my phone for different cities. But so what I have: Troy, Novi, Battle Creek, Southfield.
Yeah, it might be interesting to get, they should have some data collected. I think Berkeley has one too, right? I think it would just be
Didn't we
interesting.
have
to see
didn't
what-
we
what
have
kinds of doing.
sorry, Aaron, didn't we have a presentation from, and I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on her name, the social media specialist who did the study already, actually, of the
Lynn.
other community apps, very, very early on.
Mhm.
So I think I was still pregnant. So
Lynn Galadner.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The communications audit. Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that in there, or am I making that up?
she provided a list of companies that offer apps.
Okay.
And so from that list, I reached out and was able to make contact with a couple of them. Not all of them did apps. Some of them were out of the country, but I was able to locate 2 that gave us estimates that I can work with. And they were both pretty close. Wasn't one 7,500 and one was 6,000, I think.
I think that's right. I just wanted to add too, I'm in favor of a pilot program too, and if we could be a beta group for an app, I think that'd be fantastic. To give it a little test run and spin, see how it works, see how it could be useful to the different demographics.
All right. Well, that's great. That's great direction. I see 2 dual projects here. One is how to build a campaign for the Nixle system,
Mhm.
which we already have in place, and then explore the functionality of an app, which is supposed to kind of bypass opening up your phone, going to your browser, going to the website, searching, and it would make things easier. And I know that there are a number of different functions, if you will, that you can choose from the templates, like you're saying. So I think that would be really helpful if we could meet with the companies and we could kind of steer them in the direction of the apps that would be relevant and appropriate for Huntington Woods. You know, like one of the things that comes up is one of the trial functions was how to report abandoned vehicles. Well, that's not a big issue here, but rats are. So can we swap out abandoned vehicles for rats?
As
that-
far as Nixle, you usually put something in the weekly e-blast about that, right? Or frequently, at least?
Yes, I put it in at least once or twice a year. You know, every
Okay.
November I put the same things in, every December, and so that pops up. What's going in the e-blast this week is an annual reminder for we have a form for kids with special needs. So
Mhm.
we do try to push the regular information out. Not.
Would it be
not
possible to
usually.
do a dedicated blast just for Nixle?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do first is explore using Nixle for other departments and then coordinate how that happens, what that process is. And again, we're looking at bringing somebody on that can help with that, because now that's somebody coordinating messages from all the different departments and getting it to public safety and getting them to push it out. But yeah, I can work on a dedicated piece for Nixle and work on how to augment its reach to different departments.
I would only add on that front. Not that I think they're, again, to the point, they're not mutually exclusive. Right, Nixle and an app, Nixle will stay and still be a functionality that we have. But I think the app is probably a little further out, but we just want to be careful not to drive people hey, sign up for Nixle, right? And then all of a sudden be hey, here's an app, sign up for this app.
Right.
So we just want to be cognizant of that, of, if we're going to drive people's attention to something, what is that thing going to be? But if there's enough space between the two, then maybe it's not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, the last thing we want to do is confuse. And what do I use this for? Well, I don't need that. I already have something, right? So it would definitely have to have space.
Yeah, as long as there's clear distinction between the two. And Nixle is pretty much emergency communications, law enforcement now, correct, Amy?
Yes. Safety issues.
Yeah. As long as that's made clear in whatever campaign we wind up doing, I think it could work.
Well, and there could be, again, not to go too far in advance, but there could be a good tie-in with the app and Nixle, because a part of the app is also sign up for text alerts through Nixle, right? And that's something you can do through the app, right? They can kind of merge together, because yes, you can opt in for push notifications through the app, but people still may want Nixle's a text, right? So people may actually want that.
All right. We'll cover two things: the survey and the app. I'd like to keep the survey on the agenda and have everybody go through it and maybe pull out a couple of items besides the app that we can focus on and try to make it more robust, things that might have been lacking, or types of information too. Like I read it, but I didn't take notes and write things down. So I guess what I'm asking is, I need a little bit more time to go through it. So I'm hoping that you do too, and that we can continue the discussion on the survey in December. That sound good? Good.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right, then the last item was the great discussion that we had last month with Michelle Elder and promoting the master plan. I am putting out the RFPs for the master plan. They're gonna go out on Monday, and proposals will be due December 16th. And then I figure a month and a half to review the RFPs, do the interviews, and select a consultant. So hopefully by the beginning of February, we'll be ready to work with a planner and figure out what types of community engagement they are recommending and what the issues are and how to frame them and then how to push that out. So that's in the process. It's coming up, not here quite yet, but we are going forward with it. All right, well, our next meeting is December 15th. Is there anything else anybody would like to add or talk about or bring up as part of our communication meeting before we adjourn?
Amy, I just had a quick question on the master plan RFP. Is that something that will live publicly on the website, the RFP, or is that just go out to a select distribution list?
Usually I just put it on the state website and then we send it to planners that we know have expertise in planning. So if you think that you have somebody who would be interested, I'd be happy to send that out. I mean, do you think there's value in putting it in on the website as well?
No, I understand, right? I mean, the specialized planning, community planning firms that do kind of master plans. I'll follow up with you separately. There are a couple of firms that we've worked with and I thought might be good fits. So
Great, yes,
one, just
please.
send over a few names.
I'd love that. Yep, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Anything else? All right, go outside. Well, it's nice. It won't be like this in a month. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time
Won't be
tonight.
like this tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Oh, it's 52 tomorrow.
All right.
Pretty
Good
good.
night.
Have a good night, guys.
Right.
Good night.
Bye.